Alien metal from mysterious craft fell in Europe 36 years after Roswell UFO crash. Time has a habit of slowly erasing the fragile traces of history. Where the dry sands of the Roswell Desert in New Mexico preserve faint traces of a metal object that fell to Earth 86 years ago in 1947, the unforgiving limestone rocks and frequently harsh wet weather of Llanellar in mid-Wales have eroded all traces of the crash which took place there just 40 years ago at the beginning of 1983. However, the crash did not go unnoticed at the time, and a small dedicated band of ufologists acted with sufficient speed to preserve material from a little-known but highly significant incident that remains a mystery to this day. We don't have an exact chronology for events surrounding this incident outside the sleepy village of Llanellar, but we do have some significant clues. 2 weeks after the incident took place, a newspaper report was published in the Sunday Express for the 23rd of January, which means the crash probably took place during the first week of January 1983, between the 1st and 7th, and was reported to the press by some unknown individual when the offices of the Sunday Express opened after the new year. Author of the article, Andrew Chapman, has no record of the exact source in his archived notebooks and assumes it was just passed to him to write up. Strange debris out of the sky. An astonishing sight greeted farmer Irwell Evans as he trudged across his fields to tend his newly born lambs. Hundreds of pieces of honeycombed metal foil were strewn over an area the size of 3 football pitches. Soon his farm at Llanellar, near Aberystwyth, Wales, was like a set from a spy thriller. Police took away fragments of metal for analysis. Among the pile of debris taken away was an aerial and a large chunk of metal with part of a serial number on it. Mr. Evans, 29, who farms his 260 acres single-handed, said, "Whatever tumbled from the sky broke up on impact. Had it hit a building, there's no doubt the devastation could have been terrific. Although the pieces themselves were extremely light, they must have fallen with some force to sever branches off trees." Mr. Amir Hughes, secretary of the Cardiganshire Farmers Union, said, "I've asked the Ministry of Defence for an explanation, but so far have had no reply." Meanwhile, villagers are still speculating about the debris. An RAF spokesman said, "The debris certainly had nothing to do with us. We are examining the fragments to try to piece them together in the hope of a clue to where it came from and what it is." It would have been during the first few days of 1983 when Irwell Evans, farmer and discoverer of the extensive crash debris, made phone calls to the local police and closest RAF base, which resulted in a very thorough overnight cleanup of his fields by a large military and civilian team. In the week that followed, between the 24th and 31st, Gary Rowe received a copy of the above article, contacted Irwell, and investigated the crash site with his small team from the Wales Federation of Independent Ufologists. They recovered about half a dozen pieces of metal and foil from the wooded area adjacent to the fields, where whatever it was had hit treetops and fragmented, leaving an approximately 25-foot, 8-meter, wide swath of destruction and scattering debris before flying off apparently without a problem. Despite what some subsequent sensationalist internet reports may say, the craft was never found, and the wooded area was cleared away by the Forestry Commission at some point early in February before Gary and his team could make a second investigative visit. Of the millions of books written on the subject of UFOs crowding bookshelves the world over, this is that final missing chapter that no investigator has yet been able to produce. It's not the actual flying craft itself, but it's about as close as we are going to get short of full disclosure. But, like the 1947 New Mexico incident so many years before, it remains a complete mystery despite scientific tests on samples undertaken internationally in 2023. There have effectively been 3 independent analysis reports. The first was done by Gary Rowe and his contacts at British Aerospace UK back at the time of the crash. The second was done this year by a lab in Australia, and the third was done this year by a lab in the USA. Each end report is approximately the same page length, although the original UK report lacks photographs, and all were done without the other labs knowing multiple tests were being undertaken. The UK concluded the sample was an advanced alloy of duralumin, aluminium. Australia that this was not the case and that their sample was aluminium foam, and the USA showed in detail that their sample was lanthanum alloyed with other exotic elements. In a very recent twist of fate, a tiny fragment of honeycomb foil that looks exactly like the Llanellar fragments has been recovered from the Corona crash site in the USA, further cementing a link between both incidents, a physical link unknown when the original documentary was titled and produced back in 2008. As Gary himself concluded at the end of the 2008 production, no aircraft was missing, no pilots were missing, no mechanical things were found on the site associated with it, there were no rivets in the construction of any of this material, and whatever this strange thing was that flew that night over that farm, it managed to explode all this material, cover 4 fields with it, and then fly off again undisturbed, it appears. And as this has not been identified in the last 20-odd years, we can only conclude, and this is as far as I'm happy to go, that this remains debris from a UFO, an unidentified flying object. Mark Ollie is an internationally recognized author, TV producer, presenter, writer, lecturer, broadcaster, musician, and artist. He is a visiting lecturer at Wilmslow Guild in the University of Chester, heads up his archaeological unit and runs a DVD production and props company Mythco.